Are we live?
Yep, we are live.
I'm going to eat the mic.
Someone is
Hey, there it is.
Let's see.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our live podcast recording of our Avengers Endgame reaction show. Thank you guys for coming. I see Anthony, I see Chris, I see Ray. And let us know. We don't know if you're here unless you make a comment. So throw a comment up and let us know you're here.
I think my wife will be watching soon.
Mine
Right.
will be too.
Nick is half awake playing Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, Nick.
Nick, where are you at? What
We
world are
require
you in?
your full attention, sir.
No. What world are you in? I want to know. Are you in Pirates?
Okay, so here's how this is going to work, you guys. First of all, Sandra is monitoring all of the chat, and so we'll be able to respond to you guys. We're going to treat this just like we do any of our other podcast recordings when there's not a camera in the room. So most of the time, we're going to be talking to each other and recording the podcast. But at the end of each round, when we're done talking through a question, we will turn to the chat and talk with you guys as well. So be sure and throw your answers and your comments and your questions in there because we will get there.
And then every now and then I'll do the Jim Halpert look at the audience once someone's made a point.
And then you'll do the what is going on? Yeah, it'll be awesome. And then I'm going to go ahead and say now, hey, your wife's in the chat now. Congratulations.
Hi, Kim.
I'm going to say this now. If you have not yet seen Avengers Endgame, go away because we are
Leave
going
now.
to spoil it for you. This is a spoiler show. We are going to talk about all the details with no regard for anything. So
We're not holding back.
we are
Nope.
not. So be warned. Oh, wait, does this mean Daryl is Dwight?
Nice.
No. I don't know what I am.
I mean, do any of us really?
Wow.
What are we?
Wow.
Okay.
We need to host a Dig Deeper on life.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, longest show ever. Okay, we are going to go ahead and start the recording. So, like I said, as we go through these questions, go ahead and throw your comments in there. Sandra will be watching them, and we will come back to them as we go. And from here on out, spoiler warning. So be warned. All right, guys. Well, welcome to our Avengers Endgame reaction show. We have a nice little group here. First, there's some bad news, and then there's some good news.
Okay.
The bad news is that Jay is not with us.
Oh.
Oh.
Jay became very ill before he went to see the movie, so he had to return his tickets. And as we record this, he has not yet seen the movie, so he cannot be in the room with us.
Nope.
So if you have personal access to Jay, do not spoil anything for him. He has not seen the movie
Don't
yet.
do it. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Don't do it. Don't be that guy.
But as you're hearing a voice over here on the other side, the good news is that we do have Megan Salinas in the room.
Hey,
Huzzah.
everybody. It's so nice to be back where we don't
We're
have
not
to fight.
fighting.
Yay!
Wins.
We can celebrate the MCU
Yes.
together.
And the other voices you are hearing are the other hosts of the Story Geeks. We have Sandra Demas and Justin Weaver.
Hello.
Always a pleasure.
So before we dive into these questions, Megan, just throw a reminder out where people can find what you do. Let them know what's up.
You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. You'll be able to keep up with all of my stuff there. But yeah, if you want to listen to other projects I'm working on, I do a podcast called No Love Lost. It is a Lost retrospective podcast where my co-host Wielding loves Lost and I don't, and we talk about it. And I also do a YouTube channel called Silver Screams. So me and my co-host Katie Cullen, we talk about horror things. And now that Attack on Titan has started back up with season 3, it's back from its mid-season hiatus. So it's finally back as of today. We're going to be doing vlogs on that coming up pretty soon. So I'm real excited. I've missed it so much.
Sweet. And as we learned last time you were on the show, you and Sandra are basically the same person.
Pretty much.
I mean,
separated at birth, but which one is evil?
Yeah.
We'll
Oh.
never know.
Oh, and that's the plot twist, is that it turns out that we're both evil. What?
Oh boy.
I'd
All
watch
right.
that movie.
Yeah, you would. All right, let's dive into our questions. We're going to start real high level. So, Megan, as the guest of honor, you can start us off on this one. What did you think of Avengers Endgame?
It's funny because when you ask me that question, my mind just goes blank because I'm still processing it. It was excellent. It was I don't remember who I saw say it. I think my friend Emma Fife on Twitter put up when she got around to seeing it that it was a great celebration of the MCU. And I'm not sure if I'm quoting the correct person on that, but I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. It's funny because we were debating the last time I was here about what was more important, being a good Marvel film in terms of like being an excellent entry in the MCU or standing on its own as a film. And I don't quite know where to put Endgame in that category because for everybody who's been in it, it is this glorious celebration and it's got so many wonderful callbacks and character payoffs. It's the fantastic part 2 to everything that was set up in Infinity War. It's the payoff I never knew I always wanted for certain characters. So it was a wonderful experience. And like I said, I'm still processing a lot of the actual plot stuff that happened and the ramifications of what all this means for the MCU going forward.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that too.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Megan, what did you think? Megan, see, you are the same person.
I have to just say, Nick calls us Nega Megan and Nega Sandra, and I love that.
Anytime you can
Yes.
reference Scott Pilgrim or
Yes,
anything.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but
It's good.
He's actually an all right guy.
yeah.
Sandra,
Yes.
what did you think of the movie?
I'm kind of with my counterpart here, Megan. I'm still processing. I'm going to see it again on Thursday. There
Me
was
too.
so much going on, so many callbacks, so much to process with, like all of these films going, gosh, I haven't seen this one in a while. So now I'm remembering, oh, this was the year, this is when it happened.
Yeah.
Just an emotional roller coaster, as they say. I was just so exhausted afterwards. And our whole group, I went with a group of friends and my family, and my friends especially, we were just so exhausted afterwards because we had just put so much emotion. This is 10 years worth of films all kind of coming to an end.
Yeah.
And we were so just spent crying and screaming. And it was so much muchness.
So much muchness.
Yes.
Was it me or did it like not feel like 3
It
hours?
didn't. It
No.
felt like
No.
an hour and a half. And I'm like, it's done.
Yeah.
Weird.
I've seen it twice, and neither time have I felt like this is dragging or
Right.
they could have cut that or anything like that.
Yeah, if anything, there are a couple scenes that I'm like, I want more of that. Give me
Yep.
more of that.
Yeah, totally. What'd you think?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
That's it. I love it.
No, my wife and I have seen it twice now, and even after the second viewing, a little clip came on TV, go see Endgame, and I'm like, I'd go see it again right now. I love that movie.
Twist my arm, why don't you, television?
Yeah. And like you guys, I've been watching those movies for 10, 11 years, saw Iron Man in the theater, and I think celebration is a wonderful way of describing it because there's a funeral at the end of the movie before we get too far into all the spoilers.
We've
and
already
everything.
given the warning.
All right. So the funeral saying goodbye to this era of the MCU felt really important to me, but then still celebrating everything that it was.
Right.
And I just thought that was a wonderful way to end the movie. And then I'll be talking about the scene after that a little bit later, but yeah, I loved
Fair
it.
enough. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was just straight up amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever see another movie like this.
I don't
in
know.
all
No.
I mean,
honesty.
in my
Which is why I want to
to
keep going back and seeing it more and more.
Oh,
'cause,
for
like,
real.
there's never going to be anything else like this.
Well, we have Raider Ray. He's saying that I feel like the MCU really welcomes the Fox movies into the fold. Why, you ask? Because timelines be damned. I love that. And Nick says Cap put the stones back. So there we go. And also Ray says meow meow is back into time. And it that he took it back into time and he came back without it.
Mm-hmm.
So, meow meow.
Yep.
What else?
It's back there somewhere.
Yep.
Because the rest of Dark World couldn't have happened if it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean Mjolnir?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like meow meow, and I was like,
That's what she calls him. Meow,
It took me a
meow.
minute to.
was Goose in this movie? Are we talking about the space cat?
No, Goose wasn't. That's the one thing I'd change.
Mm.
Fair enough. All right, let me go on to our next question. Sandra, we'll start with you on this one. There was a lot of unexpected stuff in this movie. Lots of choices that I didn't see coming. Lots of sort of left turns.
Right.
What surprised you the most?
You know what was funny? It was the whole thing of explaining time travel and them taking a moment to say, oh, the raccoon and like traveling in space and all this other stuff you're fine with, but we really need to explain time travel to you. So that was a little bit odd. And then it just kind of like ceased my disbelief being suspended for a minute. And I'm just like, oh, now I have to think like, how would that work? And it felt almost a little too much. I think it's in Idiocracy where they're kind of giving this explanation of time travel and, oh, it couldn't have worked because of this reason and that. And so that felt a little peculiar for the MCU in particular. They expect us to go in and accept everything, every world that they present. It's true. It exists. We don't question it. But this was the one thing that I felt it was a little out of MCU just the way that they normally have their films.
Yeah, I feel like there was some necessary framework to that to make the rest of the story make sense and make it so that they could fix everything.
Right.
But Tony would still have his daughter and, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, they claimed that Back to the Future is all BS.
Right.
So that's bold right there.
It's whenever you start dipping your toes into time travel with your stories and with your storytelling in general, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because if you get too loosey-goosey with the rules, then you're basically playing Calvin ball with your story. And even though that can be fun, it's so easy to go off the rails really quickly. I always like time travel stories where you can't actually change anything, that time is linear, and when you actually go back in time travel, you were always meant to go back and travel through time, and then you cause what happens in the future, which is your present. Anyway, I didn't mean to like step on your toes because like we're talking about what we weren't expecting.
Right. Yeah.
Was there anything else that you were just like, what's happening?
I mean, I would have to see it again to really just process everything. That's the one thing that jumps out where I was like, oh, there was one scene in particular where they kept mentioning the different films. And I'm like, oh, that just seems a little bit out of the MCU style. But I mean, I wasn't upset about it, but just like, oh, felt a little bit off, a little different.
What surprised you?
Fat Thor.
Yeah, right?
That was the thing that took me off guard the most.
Lebowski
Thor.
It's just that surprised me, and I kind of kept forgetting about it, and then they'd keep reminding me about it. Rocket calling him melted ice cream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what's coursing through his veins? Cheese whiz.
Yeah.
Like just all of the different lines.
So that like visually took me off guard more than anything else in the movie. But I think the part that like felt out of control, like I just didn't see it coming, was the nebulas being linked up to each other. And Thanos being clued off to what was happening because of the recording. That was like, no, like, I knew it had to happen somehow, but that was the link that totally made sense. I thought it was great, but I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
What about you, Megan?
I'm going to be honest. The most unexpected thing came really early on. It was killing Thanos and then immediately cutting to 5 years later.
5 years
I was
later.
like, I thought this whole thing was building up to finding him and defeating him to get the stones back. But within the first 15 minutes of the movie, he destroyed, like maybe 20 minutes. I don't know. I don't know what is time. I certainly don't know what time is while watching Endgame. But within the first act, before the title card even comes up, he destroys the stones and they kill him. And then we cut to 5 years later. I'm like, what's the rest of the movie? How do we fix this?
Yeah.
And I figured it was going to have to be some stuff with the quantum realm and time travel, but like I was completely thrown off guard almost immediately.
Yeah.
And then talking about how they were basically, quote unquote, debunking Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious that they, quote unquote, debunked that movie and then proceed to basically reenact the plot of Back to the Future 2, because a good chunk and I think it was at one, like hiding behind a corner looking at the end of the, oh my God, we're doing this. We're really doing this. This is amazing.
Yeah, I was definitely caught off guard by Lebowski Thor as well. But just to say something different, I think another thing that caught me off guard in a really wonderful way was some of the choices they made for the cameos in the scenes in the past.
Yeah.
Like we got to see, they chose to put Frigga in instead of Odin, which I thought was awesome.
Mhm.
We got to see Alexander Pierce again, which was really surprising because Robert Redford has very publicly retired. Yet he turns around and appears in this movie. So that was really cool. So
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peggy Carter, and even even
Someone just ask Megan how cool it was to see the nod to Agent Carter.
it was, first of all, it's always
Jarvis?
wonderful. See,
Yeah, that's right.
Honestly, having the
officially the only TV to movie crossover now.
right?
Wow.
That was it. Like it was such a tiny thing,
Mhm.
but I mean the television universe and the MCU proper, for it all being a quote unquote connected universe, they've been very separate from
Yeah.
one another.
Yeah.
And poor Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. having to acquiesce to everything in the films, and the films having no regard for anything that happens in the television series has been one of my biggest critiques about the MCU as a whole over the past decade, because I'm a big Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. And I'm like, hey, I want my stuff acknowledged because like this is important and it's all part of the same world. Acknowledge it. And so even just this one tiny little nod for a show that got canceled after 2 seasons, that broke my heart that it got canceled. But like just that one little hint of acknowledgement, I was like, yes, 1,000 times yes. This is wonderful.
Yeah. What are we seeing in the chat?
Yeah, we're seeing, everyone's agreeing with Megan that they loved Amen. I love Clark Gregg and Coulson. Well, someone says, Raider Ray says, I've seen the movie 3 times, and 3 times I said, screw the Mets. Maybe a Yankees fan? Yeah, just nods for the TV universe getting some love. People are excited to see that.
Cool.
And, Nick agrees that it was insane to kill Thanos. And it really was to kill him so quickly and then jump to 5. And I thought months, right? Months, years.
Yeah.
What?
The fact
Later.
that the world had to pick up and move on.
Oh, right.
And all like, I was like, is this the leftovers now? Is this the leftovers with superheroes? And the fact that the entire world had to pick up and live in the remnant of the world
right.
that Thanos created. And basically the entire globe, everybody who is left on the planet, like all have collective PTSD.
Yeah.
And seeing like Cap trying to help everyday people in that sort of headspace and in that world, illustrates 1, how hopeless everything really seems, and 2, how much of a hero Cap is, even when he's not fighting supervillains.
Nick mentions that Joe Russo being in the group was cool, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
And
was
Jim
really...
Starlin was also in that
Oh,
scene,
wow.
the creator of Thanos.
Oh wow.
Yep.
And yeah, first canonically gay character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as
Right.
far as the films go. Obviously, the television shows have had a little bit more diversity. But yeah, in the films, first openly gay character.
That's true.
And A Holder says, I really hope that there are some comics or something like a Disney Plus show expanding on that 5-year gap. Oh, Anthony.
That would be
Anthony.
awesome.
Oh my god.
Anthony says that. I wasn't
Yes.
sure if you want to go by AG. So he says,
Anthony's one of our bloggers.
He
For
is.
you guys out there. Anthony and Ashley handle our blog, which is awesome. You should go check it out.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't say this very often, but somebody call Damon Lindelof and get him on that MCU leftover show. I won't say that very often because I have a lot of words about Lost.
Should we call
but-
it MCU The Lost Years?
Oh.
No, yes. 100% yes. Even though it makes me angry.
They just have to be really selective about which characters they choose for that show. Because like Spider-Man, the Doctor Strange, they just be very short shows during those years.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Wow.
Oh.
wah, wah.
Wah, wah. Along those lines, I would still like to see what Cap and Natasha and Sam were up to in between Civil War and
Yeah.
Infinity War too.
Oh, yeah.
Just that whole Secret Avengers thing.
Mhm.
I want to see more of that. I don't think that will happen now, but man, I would love to.
Aw.
All right, let's talk some. Well, you know what? I was about to skip a question. I'm not going to do that. Okay, let's be honest. Raise your hand right now on camera so everybody can see you if you cried at least once during this film. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, right?
Shout out
I'm
to
a
the
crier.
podcast listeners.
Everybody raised their hands.
Everybody raised their hand. Okay, Justin, we'll start with you on this one. What made you the most emotional?
Everything involving Hawkeye got
Yeah.
me from the
Oh, right.
very first scene.
Yeah.
Where he lost his family and just
Mhm.
didn't understand what was happening. That was heart-wrenching. To he and Natasha fighting for who would sacrifice themselves for the other person.
Mhm.
That was a wonderful scene of friendship.
Right.
Oh my goodness. And then saying goodbye to Tony was hard. And then but I'm just like a low bar when it comes to crying in these movies because I care so much about all of it. So also just seeing all the characters come back in the final sequence was deeply moving to me, and fighting alongside each other in combinations we hadn't seen and all of that. So yeah, but everything involving Hawkeye was probably what hit me the most.
Yeah.
And him saying like, "Don't give me hope." You know, it's like,
Oh.
oh, this
Yeah.
guy, this poor guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Megan, what do you think?
I only cried once, which was a surprise to
Really?
me because I spent most of Infinity War on the edge of my seat going like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When are they going to kill everybody? And then, so this movie felt a lot more triumphant, but I didn't have nearly the same level of anxiety as I did watching Infinity War, oddly enough, even though I knew there was going to be some permadeath.
Right.
That being said, I got very emotional when Cap started wielding Mjolnir.
Yeah.
I didn't cry, but that was probably the most emotional I got during the film. And I'll talk about that scene a little bit more when we get to a different question.
Yeah.
But the moment that made me cry was cheeseburgers.
Oh,
It was
yes.
cheeseburgers.
Mm.
Just the fact that it was Jon Favreau talking to Morgan, and yeah, really good kid actress. You know, and she's just like cheeseburgers. I want
Yeah.
cheeseburgers, and he's like, your dad
Your dad
really liked cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
And it was just talking about things coming full circle.
Yeah.
It, you know, in terms of like this beautiful send off that we're getting for Tony, and how wonderful a payoff that is, and how like it acts as a fantastic farewell to this saga of the MCU. There are people left behind,
Yeah.
and Happy is one of those people, and so is Peter. And you know, we're gonna be the knowledge that we're gonna be dealing with this in the next Spider-Man movie, Far From Home.
Mhm.
Like that is something I'm really looking forward to exploring and unpacking, because Peter and him had a very interesting dynamic and relationship, and so I'm getting choked up just thinking about it.
What about you, Sandra?
Well, I'm just going to give you an update. So Anthony says he cried at Avengers Assemble.
Yeah.
And that brings up a really interesting point, because I think there were moments, so many moments in this film that we cried tears of joy as well as tears of sadness.
Yeah.
Avengers Assemble was, I think, one of those where, and when everyone just started coming back, that was such a beautiful moment. But I'm with you. I cried at the very beginning. I was like, already? Why? I think the idea of losing your family, having a family, it's like how I would respond with my entire family just disappearing in front of me. I cried there. I cried, oh my gosh, of course, Tony. I cried at the scene with the Soul Stone, and just, I think not only was it a beautiful depiction of friendship, but it was such a beautiful depiction of what grace and mercy looks like, because for Natasha, she's telling Clint, like, I don't judge people by their worst actions and by their worst, their worst, basically. And he has done so bad, and he just doesn't feel like his life is worth saving, so he should die. And he's like, you know what I've done. You've seen what I've done. And her just speaking that over him, I thought was so beautiful. And then when she finally just like pushes herself off and he watches her, that scene, I was crying well into the next scene. Like it just, and it wouldn't stop. They just kept coming.
Yeah.
And so many moments.
And like that moment did so much for Natasha's character arc,
because
she, like, the bits and pieces that we've gotten about her backstory and her development over the course of the MCU, she's a person who used to do anything to survive, whether that meant backstabbing people. She's lived through several different regime changes, and she's had to betray people, and she is a survivor, and is willing to do unspeakable things, for the job.
Right.
And in this film, everything she's known and loved and cared about is gone, and she has to step up to take Nick Fury's place, trying to keep peace in the world and kind of the universe at large too, working with Captain Marvel, because it's happening on a cosmic scale.
Yeah.
So it's so cool seeing her step up to that leadership position, and then much like we get with Tony in this movie, making the self-sacrificing play.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was beautiful, and I wholeheartedly agree. The second the movie started and we see Barton with his daughter, I literally went,
like,
"Oh no!"
Yeah. I think for me, two come to mind. I mean, all those for sure, but two other ones come to mind. When Tony arrives back on Earth, and he's like, "Where's?" And then Pepper shows up, and he's just like that moment right there.
That was so good
when they get reunited. But the other one that really, really hit me was when Scott was trying to find Cassie, and then he went to the house and he knocked on the door.
That got me too.
And she answered the door, and I know,
and it's this young woman. It's this little girl,
and I'm like, I felt like I was inside his head, because I'm like, I can totally picture what he's thinking right now. He's thinking, I just lost a bunch of my daughter's life.
Right.
And he's mourning that, and he's shocked and he's sad. But then he has the realization, but wait a minute, she's still here.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's just like, you're so big, you know? And
because I mean, a big part of his motivation in the first film and even in the second film was, I need to be around for my daughter. I can't go back to jail because I need to be here for her. She's not going to be this age forever. She's going to grow up, and I want to be a part of her life. And here, due to circumstances completely out of his control, he has done just that. He's been in a very different kind of prison, and he's missed me.
Good night, Nick. He's signing off, by the way.
Oh,
It's
thanks for
night
joining
for
us,
him.
Nick. Good luck on Kingdom Hearts. Okay, let's talk our favorite moments. So you can go beyond the one that made you cry here. You You can go for the ones that made you cheer, the ones that pissed you off, whatever you want to do. But let's talk our top 3, specifically 3. We have to hold the 3 here. Favorite moments in the film, and we'll go one by one. We'll all do 3, then we'll all do 2, and then we'll all do 1. So, Megan, why don't you start us off? What is your number 3 favorite moment?
Now I have mine will quick succession of one another, but I am well, because I mean the entire third act of this movie
I know
is
it's just giant fan service.
It really
Yeah.
is. But 3, because again, this entire movie is for the fans.
Yeah.
And I don't say that enough because it's usually hollow rhetoric, but this movie really is for the fans. So, but my number 3 has to be when Spider-Man comes back. I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm currently wearing my Spider-Man shirt. And yeah, I mean, Spider-Man's just been such a big part of my superhero fandom. So it's been a big part of like my superhero experience ever since I was little. He's the hero that's always been my favorite out of everything Marvel related and DC related. So seeing him come back, even though like I knew he was going to come back, I know he's got another movie coming back up. It doesn't matter because I'm like, there he is. He's back under Ruse.
Peter.
And yeah, this is nice because again, that's a wonderful callback to Far From Home.
It's not a hug.
When, exactly. And I was just like, "Aw, that's wonderful."
Yeah.
Took
so many. Okay.
I never promised you guys this was going to be easy.
I know. You know, I'm going to have to go. I'm going to agree actually with Raider Ray 44. He says my favorite moment is world's opening. And I love that moment. It was on here as well because we see that what was lost was restored.
Yeah.
And so everyone's coming back, and that's the happy tears moment. Some of the other ones are sad tear moments, but they were very powerful. But here's a happy tear moment.
Yeah.
We see everyone coming back and they're ready to join forces. My husband was like, "Oh, look, there's Frodo, there's, Luke Skywalker." Because he's like, everybody's coming back. I'm like, knock it off. He's like, there's a unicorn. I'm like, Pegasus.
Shazam. He's in the background.
He was just like naming all these characters. But it was just such a powerful moment to see the characters that we maybe even forgot. That's right. Yes. And they all come back and they're all ready to turn what was utterly hopeless into something that they can actually win.
Yeah.
So I love that moment.
What do you got at number 3?
I have the time heist Battle of New York moments that are with Cap. So I kind of sort of cheated, but I have like
someone was
a
bound
Cap
to.
scene. So it's
Jay's
just,
not here to do it, so you may as well.
The elevator scene, having him walk into.
Right.
So there were so many times in that movie
yeah.
that they reused elements from previous movies, and so having him enter that and do the Hail Hydra and everything, just abusing his knowledge, it was just awesome. And then fighting himself. And then ending that scene with like, that is America's ass. Like, it was just like, it was so funny. So I
felt like that elevator scene, the Hail Hydra thing. And this might just be me reading into it, but I felt like that was also the Russo brothers looking at Marvel Comics.
Right.
They did a whole storyline where there was a thing where Steve was revealed to be an agent of Hydra. Yeah. And it was like a reality got altered kind of thing, whatever.
And it was
a
silly.
Bad idea.
It was not good.
It was a bad idea.
Shame on you.
And I feel like this was the Russo brothers going, yeah, that was stupid. We know it. We're telling you.
We're telling you because Cap is not Hydra.
Right.
He's the antithesis of Hydra. How dare anyone even pretend otherwise. But yeah, that was such a good moment. And this is coming from the person who went to bat for Winter Soldier during our nerd fight.
That's right. Nice.
So that moment was an excellent choice.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's still a little angry at me that she didn't win. So.
A little bit. No hard feelings except for all of them.
Yeah.
My number 3 is also Cap related, but I'm going to go all the way to the tail end of the film. Well, not what you're thinking. Not the Peggy Carter moment. That was wonderful. But I'm thinking of when he passes the shield on to Sam.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know that so badly. I wanted to know, is it going to be Sam or is it going to be Bucky? Like, someone's going to get it. Who's going to get it? And are we going to see it in this movie? And it just made me so happy that we got it.
Oh, yeah.
And his response was simply, I'll do my best.
Yep.
That's so good. And then
that's a Captain America response. In all honesty,
it is. And then Bucky also telling him like, go ahead. And when he gets the shield, like Bucky's giving him the nod. He's like, yes, it's yours. You take it, you know?
Yeah.
No, it was
So cool.
Perfect.
By the way, Anthony agrees with you. He agrees with your point about the shout out, but he did like the Hydra Cap storyline. Hail Hydra.
Well,
Agree
And
to
your wife said
disagree.
Hail Hydra too.
people can like what they like.
Agree
Yeah.
to disagree.
yeah, Jamie's
That's
on
the
here.
thing. Let
Yeah,
people
she
enjoy
liked that
things. just because you guys just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to make a big thing about it. So
Hey, some of the best conversations we've had on this show are me and Anthony arguing about stuff. So,
Oh.
so it's all good. We don't have to agree. Number two favorite moment, Megan.
number 2 favorite moment is going to be I Am Iron Man. Not like just the moment where because it's Tony. It again, it's all of that coming full circle,
Yep.
and it's Tony accepting what's about to happen to. It's so well written because it's a callback to earlier in the film when Thanos said he was inevitable, and he made a callback to that line. So we get rule of threes right there, and then of course we get no, I am Iron Man, which is the moment that kicked off this entire
Yeah.
series. So to have him say I am Iron Man and then snap, and to have that be the end of Thanos as well as Tony Stark, that's a perfect bookend to this character, to this as we said earlier, as this particular saga of the MCU. It was the perfect capstone, and
Or the perfect Tony Stone.
That's what I was thinking.
the perfect
Sorry.
Infinity Stone. It was the perfect capstone to this saga, and it's sad that it came at such a cost, but it was the moment that, you know, it was such a good moment. I can't. I mean,
that was the moment that Nick said, "Oh crap, it's over."
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanos too.
It was beautiful too because Tony became Iron Man to change his life and change his destiny and help people and not cause war anymore, right? And there is no better realization of that destiny than to literally bring half of the universe back into existence.
Yeah.
Well, and the and not to mention that it's, you know, it's good foreshadowing in the original Avengers too, because he was the one that was willing to sacrifice himself, you know, to save New
With the
York
nuke,
at
yeah.
the end there too. And in Iron Man 3, he's having trouble sleeping because of what he went through.
Yeah.
And so with this moment, he is Iron Man. He stops Thanos, and now he can rest.
Yeah.
Yep. Sandra, what do you have at number 2?
It is the Natasha and Clint scene. I think
yeah.
right there. I've already said it, so maybe can I sneak another one in?
Like
You
a
mean can
runner,
you cheat? Sure.
a runner-up number 2.
my honorable mention that I wasn't going to say. It's seeing all of the female characters come together, and then seeing Scarlet
Minus
Witch.
Natasha.
Oh, I know,
Ugh.
I know. Oh, stop it. But seeing Scarlet Witch, especially in like how much, telling Thanos, like, you've taken so much from me. And
And he's
she
like,
just-
and you are.
He's like, I don't even know who you are.
and she just, I mean, seeing them all together and seeing them just kick his butt. I loved that. And yeah, and then that shift of all of the shots are now going towards something, and we're like, oh, Captain Marvel, we forgot about her. Like, she just shows up, and just seeing all of them together. That was so
moment
wonderful.
she introduces herself to Peter Parker.
Yeah. You got something for me?
Yeah, it was just, it filled me with so much glee.
Oh,
What do you have at number 2?
I have Cap wielding Mjolnir.
Someone had to say it.
Yeah.
Right?
And Thor saying that he knew it. And I mean, we all knew it, that he was worthy of that. So I'm curious, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think, if Cap was being humble in Age of Ultron and he could have lifted it at that point, but just chose not to. Or if, like, I don't know, do you guys think something happened in his character that made him worthy?
I don't think he was there yet.
yeah.
I think he needed to go through the events of Civil War before reaching that point, you know, to sort of push back against government and not, and really be like not just America's hero, but the world's hero, and work and do for what's right, not just what America thinks is right.
Right.
So I feel like he wasn't quite there yet.
So that was actually a part of his arc, not just something that could have happened at any point.
I think so. I mean,
Awesome.
I
I
guess
like
you'd
that
probably
answer.
have to ask
I like
Joss
that
Whedon,
answer.
but I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that so many of the characters have had these wonderful arcs where they've just gotten more of themselves, like just stronger, more worthy for Cap. And I think even for Tony, you know, he started off not necessarily a good guy in a sense, but then he was able to sacrifice himself in the way that he did.
Yeah.
And for Cap, I think as noble as he was from the very beginning, like before he even had the serum and he was this tiny little guy shielding everyone from this grenade, even then he became even more noble and more humble. And I think it was something that came and he was finally worthy.
Yeah.
I have to concur with that assessment. Like I don't even know if it's specifically the events of Civil War, although I certainly think that's a contributing factor because at the end of Civil War, he is left with no backup. It's just him and his friends. There's no government support. It's just him following his heart, trying to do what's right. And I think that's an important lesson. And it was a lesson he learned in Winter Soldier as well, is that you can't always rely on the administration to do the right thing. You have to follow your heart. And so I feel like that was part of that lesson. But also we forget there have been 5 years since they failed. And I think part of that lesson was, you know, tied in with Thor's arc as well, in terms of failure ultimately makes us stronger. And it's that failure to stop Thanos and having to persist in the world after that I think is what helped push Cap to where he needed to be in order to fully be worthy of Mjolnir.
And it demonstrated his integrity also, for
Yeah.
sure, that he's the same person 5 years in that he was,
Right.
you know, at the moment it happened. So
Yeah, especially in the circle scene where he's talking to everyone and telling them to have hope. Like that was not the first time he has had to say that in the 5 years. And so to continue to persist and be hopeful for 5 years when they're gone, life is totally changed. I mean, the whole world has changed in these 5 years. Seeing that one kid when he sees Ant-Man and he turns around and he just looks so hardened as a kid. You know, he's not riding his bike for fun. He's probably alone. You know, maybe his whole family's gone. And so to persist and be hopeful in those 5 years, absolutely, I think that changed Cap in a way to make him more worthy.
Yeah. I think my number 2 is, it's a dark one. It's one of the dark moments in the movie, but I loved it. I think at this moment, I leaned over to my wife and I said, I already love this movie. And it's right after we get the 5-year jump and Nat is in Avengers headquarters. And she's just finished having sort of that virtual conference with Okoye and Carol and all the other characters. And Rhodey tells her that he thinks that it was Barton who did this horrible slaughtering of all these villains or whatever. And Nat asks him to go find him. And he's like, I don't think I should. And she just kind of looks at him and says, please.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Just like the desperation that exists in her. She's so disillusioned. She's so beaten down, but she still wants to find her friend and bring him back and still hold on to something good. Like, I just love how loaded that scene was.
Oh, yeah.
So
we started watching through the Avengers movies because my brother somehow hasn't seen a bunch of them. And I just learned that and it kind of set me off. But in the first Avengers movie, she's in that chair doing the interrogation and everything. And she gets the phone call and she's like staying there. And then Coulson says Barton's been compromised.
Yeah. And she just drops
that
everything.
hit Kim and I so much because we're like, oh, like knowing, you know, just revisiting these movies, I think will continue to bring more and more depth to the decisions that they've made in Endgame.
Yeah.
But their relationship has been something that, you know, has existed for years now. So it's just,
and it made me think too. So there's the moment in the original Avengers where when Barton finally loses his effect that Loki has on him and he and Nat are fighting, and he hits his head, and it starts to fade and stuff like that. I used to think, oh, he finally just hit his head hard enough, and he shook it. But after watching all this stuff, I don't think it's that at all. I think it's in the movie.
My number one is Cap wielding Mjolnir.
Yep.
I won't dwell on it too much since we just got done talking about it. But yeah, that is hands down my number one moment. It's the moment where I wanted to throw up my arms and cheer.
Yeah.
It's the moment I've been waiting for ever since Thor and Cap were on screen together at the same time. Yeah, it was fantastic. And even Thor just going, I knew it. Like it was so, I think it was pretty cathartic too, because he had just realized not that long before this moment that he was still worthy of Mjolnir. Yeah, he doesn't need it because he's the god of lightning and he is Stormbreaker, but Mjolnir, it's not about having the strength to hold it, it's about being worthy of it.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really important to him where after failing and then killing Thanos and then failing to be the king that his people deserve, I think it was so important for him to realize that he was still worthy of it. And then to follow that up with him being like having that moment like in Thor Ragnarok when he sees the Hulk in the arena and he's just like, yes! It was a very similar moment for Thor seeing Cap wield Mjolnir. So it was just, yeah. And that's exactly how I felt. Just, yes!
Oh, we were screaming in our theater.
Yeah, there
So
was a lot of
exciting.
screaming. What's your number one?
My number one, it's a sad one. And it's of course, losing Iron Man is sad, period. But seeing the scene with Spider-Man and with Pepper, just seeing them over him, it was very personal for me to be in that space where, you know, someone is going to lose their battle and you have to release them. You have to be in that space to say, we'll be okay, rest. That I think resonates with so many people who've had to just be in that space. So I was just sobbing. I mean, that to me was the most powerful scene for me personally, of course, for personal reasons, but to be there and to see that, to see him wanting to stick around, you know that he wants to be there for his daughter and for Pepper. And then to see Peter, who is like a son to him. I think the moment that he was able to really bond with Peter, I think helped him see that he could be a dad.
Yeah.
So here he is now looking into his eyes and he's like, we won, sir. You know, he's telling him that and all of the good things to just leave him with comfort to know that they'll be okay. We won and we'll be okay. And you can go now.
Well, and
I was done.
I saw you shouldn't be tweeting spoilers at people, but I saw on Twitter, I was scrolling through today, somebody took a screen cap from Infinity War where it's I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. And then you contrast that with the screen cap from Endgame of Tony dying and him going, Mr. Stark, don't go.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, my heart.
It gets you.
Anthony says, I'm not a Gwyneth Paltrow fan. Same. But she was excellent in that scene. And she really was. Yeah. She really was.
Justin, what's your number one?
My number one was seeing the Avengers assemble, like having all those portals open. That was such a grand scene that I think that's one of the examples of we'll never see a movie like this again in our lifetime, where I kept comparing it to the end of the Battle of Minas Tirith, where, you know, Aragorn comes with the undead army and
Frodo.
Exactly. And
and it's right before that when you get the little static in Cap's ear and you start to hear Sam's voice and Sam says on your left.
On your left.
That is my absolute favorite scene.
Yeah. Like my friends and were like, and we're like, we just kept looking at each other with tears in our eyes. And like my friend had this giant box of tissues and we just put our hands out, like, give them to me. And we're just, but we just were screaming. I mean, we're shameless. Our arms were in the air. Our legs were in the air. We're just like, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
I am here for the Winter Soldier love. It gives me life right now, guys.
For sure. For sure. What are some of the other moments we're seeing in the chat?
My fave We have a commenter saying, my fave is when all the heroines assembled. Too bad Black Widow wasn't there.
Yes.
Daryl said that, and it still hurts us. Kim, your wife, she says the female squad moment was the absolute best.
Girl
Absolutely.
squad!
Yeah.
It would have
Fair
been better
enough.
if Squirrel Girl were in the MCU.
Oh
I'm
my
just saying.
gosh.
I
Kamala
also-
Khan.
Kamala
She's
Khan.
coming.
I also wouldn't have hated it if Quake was there.
Oh
Just
yeah,
saying. From
yeah,
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. love.
that would have been cool.
I don't know how she would have gotten there, but
Haywood Wong is wondering how they will explain the Widow solo movie. That's a prequel, though.
it's a prequel, yeah.
yeah.
Have they said that?
Either that,
That
or
bums me
we've
out. I don't wanna see a
established that
prequel.
time travel is a thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
So maybe Barton gets real low.
Maybe
and
in the
he's
5
like,
years. No, I don't know.
Ah,
I don't know
No.
the time specifically, but I've read that it's a prequel.
okay.
I've heard
Well,
that
we'll
as
see.
well.
Yeah.
Which honestly, it's the only, unless we are doing another time travel movie, it's the only thing that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Or if we don't understand the Soul Stone as well as we think we do.
Ah!
I'm just saying.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I also don't think you're right.
Okay, let's take a look at the original 6 Avengers and talk through their journey a little bit. And rather than call on everybody individually, we'll just kind of popcorn in on this one and maybe power through it a little bit more quickly. But let's talk about what their journey looks like in this film. Are you happy with where they ended up? Where do you think they might be headed? And let's start with Banner Hulk, whatever we should call him.
Yeah.
Professor
The
Hulk.
Banner Hulk hybrid, Professor Hulk, yes.
He's
So-
the credible Hulk, as the
Yeah.
meme shows.
The credible Hulk,
Yeah,
that's right.
he's this guy, the
Yeah.
dabber.
Talking about unexpected moments, seeing the Hulk just sitting
Yeah.
down at a cafe, perfectly like acting like a normal person was definitely something that threw me off. I think it's interesting that basically Banner completed his character arc like right at the beginning of the movie. He's like, I'm in a good place right
Yeah.
now. This is where I'm at.
It
And
was so zen.
yeah, he had found inner peace, and then everything after that was an extension of that. Even being the one to volunteer to use their makeshift gauntlet that they created. And he mentions offhandedly that he had been, when he snapped to bring everybody back, he had been trying to bring Nat back too, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I feel like there's more room to explore in terms of having to deal with that grief and the sacrifice of, having lost her. But as far as the Hulk goes, I feel like he's pretty zen right now. And I feel like he's just going to be a science bro from now on.
Yeah, they sort of used him as the bright spot of the film.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have Drax, so they couldn't have the crazy Drax
Uh-huh.
moments of humor.
Yeah.
And they sort of like, well, we've sort of done the raging Hulk thing. We've done Hulk smash. Like
It's kind of funny that he's like embarrassed by that now.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so gratuitous.
Yeah.
we've already
I'm
made
sure.
fun of the sun's
Him
getting
trying
real
to
low.
blend in New
Yeah.
York was hilarious. Like,
So, I love that. I was like, just do something different with him. Let's just use him to encourage everybody else,
Yeah.
which is so unexpected.
Well, Anthony says Hulk tacos.
Hulk
so-
tacos. That was a great scene.
Oh,
That
Yeah.
was awesome.
it's so good.
All right, what about Hawkeye?
Well, he gets a Disney Plus series.
Yeah, but is it going to be focused on him or is it going to be focused on Kate Bishop?
Well,
I guess we don't know
maybe
that yet. But
will he kind of quickly toss it
will
off?
there be a Kate Bishop or will they use his daughter as the Kate Bishop character?
I don't know what to think about this because on the one hand, again, his character arc had kind of been completed in Age of Ultron. Like he knew
Yeah.
what was important. He knew when it was time to step away, and Civil War brought him back. But like he hadn't really grown or changed. It was just, I'm doing you guys a favor
Mhm.
right now. Here he progresses in a completely different direction, and it's Nat who has to bring him back from that. And so it's interesting because he gets his family back, but at the cost of his best friend who he loved
Yeah.
very dearly. So it'll be interesting because he still needs to be there for his family, and he's exceedingly lucky to have them back and very grateful to have them back. But I'm wondering if the memory of Nat, or knowing that his family came back at the cost of Nat's life is going to continue to haunt him.
Mm-hmm.
And if he'll have to keep on heroing in order to kind of assuage that guilt.
Anthony says that Variety has said that the Hawkeye show will be Clint training Kate Bishop.
Oh, I love that.
So-
Anthony's got all the answers.
He
There we go.
does.
Good job, Anthony.
I think one thing I missed with Hawkeye, because I love that they took him to the Ronin place, and I love that they darkened him up. But I felt like as soon as he was back with the Avengers, he was old Hawkeye again, and just sort of feeling guilty for where he had been in the meantime.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him struggle with that a little bit more. Like, I wanted to see him be in some sort of a fight and just about to kill somebody, and Nat has to stop him from doing it or something like that. You know?
I guess they didn't really get the room to explore that because they immediately went
so
to a
much going
planet
on.
where there was
There was
nobody.
no one else.
And there was an opportunity for him to possibly get his family back. So I think it was, possibly still in him to struggle that way, but it was that hope that maybe suppressed it for the time that we saw.
Yeah. You're quiet over there. You got anything you want to throw out?
I loved that we focused on him.
You're wearing
when-
purple, so
I
you should
know.
be talking about Hawkeye.
Absolutely. I love that we got to focus on him in this movie because he was, glaringly absent from Infinity War. So he got to be the person we lived through, more or less. And he's the person that allowed someone to come into this movie having not seen any of the other movies and understand what the stakes are, what we get back. So he was the person that went back in time first and, demonstrated that it worked. So I just thought that he was a great, one of the primary antagonists or protagonists of the movie. So.
And you bring up a good point, which Anthony again also mentions, that Clint's little trip through time really snapped him back into reality. So I think
that's true.
I think that's a really good point because he got to call his daughter.
Yeah.
And that I think immediately set him right. And he gave him that why, as Jay would say, gave him that why again.
All right. What about Black Widow? This one, I'll start off on this one because this is my biggest thing. I wish that we got more reaction to her death. Like, I loved her character in this movie. I think she might have been my favorite character in the movie this time around. And I love that she was the one that made the sacrifice to get the Soul Stone. I love that scene and how that came about. But I do feel like after the fact, it was kind of let go of too quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there was so much going on, even as the viewer, it's like, oh, now we're over here. But then I think there was a nod to her at some point. Somebody said something because I remember going, oh, that's right. Like, still kind of sad over that. But
they were standing around talking about her, and Tony said, "Do we know if she had family?" And Cap said, "Yeah,
we were,
What happens, is after they all come back from their round trips through time, she's the only one that didn't come back, and so that was the question of where's that. And the movie takes a proper beat for them to mourn, but because time is still of the essence, they don't have time for a big send-off. They have time to be frustrated, and they have time to mourn her a little bit, but they don't really. There's still a fight coming, and
then we get a huge funeral for Tony,
right?
Yeah, and so when she died, I really applaud the movie for not making it feel like she was fridged.
Yeah.
But I understand the complaint of like it should have been a bigger deal.
Yeah.
But I also understand the perspective of like we're saddened by this loss, but we don't have the time to mourn.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why they needed that moment between Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye after Iron funeral because they got to mourn together.
Yeah.
Like he's mourning Nat and she's still mourning Vision, which that one's still it's not coming back.
I was expecting him to come back in some way in this movie.
Well, here's why I say I think that it bothers me because it does bother me, but that might be a positive thing because I'm sure if you put yourself in the shoes of those characters, that's how they felt about it too. Right. Like I'm sure Clint was there at Tony's funeral thinking, well, we lost Nat too.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Where's her
Like,
big funeral?
you know, yeah, I'm sure
Where's-
it was unceremonious
and
as well.
and like for everything, I mean, Nick Fury didn't share a moment with anybody mourning Nat.
yeah.
And like, you know, we didn't get a moment with Rhodey, who had been working side by side with her for
Yeah.
several years now. It's Cap and Hulk and Hawkeye that have the big emotional reactions because they were the closest to her, but we don't really get a whole lot from everybody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a shame, but there's a 3-hour runtime. Like, I get it.
know.
it's a juggling.
And
Yeah.
they have a moment where the 5 other original Avengers are out on a dock talking about it for a little while. So there is a short scene after that the 5 people, like, she should be the 6th.
Mhm.
And the second time I saw it, I'm like, oh, she's the one that's not there. Like,
Yeah.
it was weird to see that and kind of remember that it wasn't the big group. It was just the original 6
Yeah.
Avengers minus her.
Oh.
And they're talking about it, trying to figure it out. And that's where Clint's talking about, oh, you go tell the red-faced guy
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
go fly into space and tell him that. And
And to not have Cap go, what an odd description.
Yeah.
yeah, I want
I
to
was
see
wondering
that
if he
when
was
he
gonna jump on it.
returns that
Wait,
that
red-faced
stone.
guy?
Yeah, when he returns that stone, he's like, hey,
Yeah.
all right, peace out.
Ryan George of Screen Rant does a series called Pitch Meeting.
I
He-
love Ryan George.
Oh, it's so hilarious.
hilarious.
And yeah, he did one for Endgame, and he's talking about how, like, oh, and then Cap has to go and return all the stones. It's like, oh, so we're not going to see that moment where he has to re-inject Natalie Portman with the weird Kool-Aid juice, and we're not going to see that moment where he has to
Awkward
awkwardly
conversation.
ask Red Skull for direction.
From the kiddie pool.
Oh my god.
How come we
Oh,
don't get to
boy.
see that?
So Jamie, did you see her comment?
What did she say?
She, in
Oh,
regard to
yes.
Black Widow, she finally got rid of the red in her ledger.
She's
Oh, my heart broke again.
okay. I'm gonna reveal what a twisted person I am because she said that we were talking about it after we saw it together.
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know, Jamie's my wife, by the way. We were talking about it after we saw it, and she said she finally got rid of the red in her ledger. And my response to that was, yeah, and the red in her head, which I know is
In
really
her hair.
dark and terrible.
I have a dark sense of humor, but excuse you,
I know.
Dara.
I know if
You
Helen
should be
if Helen O'Hara
ashamed
were
of
here, she would
yourself.
say, "You're a monster."
Go think about what you've done.
I know.
Let's talk about the dude. I mean, Thor.
Oh,
I do
melted ice cream.
I
Melted
think
ice
it's
cream, yes.
hilarious that they were making so many Big Lebowski jokes. Again, as a nod to the original Iron Man, because Jeff Bridges was in that
I
movie.
know.
I love how everything in this has come full circle. But I know this.
My
is-
wife just called me a
Yes,
bad
that's
person.
what I'm laughing.
I think out of everything, Thor's arc is what's the most controversial about the movie. It seems
Yeah.
to be the thing that people have been latching onto, saying that they dislike the most or that they like the least.
Mhm.
And I'm going to disagree with that assessment. And that comes from a very personal place of like, I get where Thor's coming
Oh, yeah.
from. Like, I will never, thank God, I will never have to know it on the scale that he knows it, but I know what it's like to fail and to beat yourself up about it, to feel
Yeah.
guilty about it, and to feel shame about it, and to like not care about what happens to yourself afterwards. And so like seeing him come back from that
Mhm.
is super meaningful for a lot of people, but
Mm.
for a lot it's bumming me out that a lot of people are looking at that not as a way to pick yourself back up from failure.
Mm.
It makes me sad that a lot of people are like, oh, well, they ruined what was set up in Thor Ragnarok. Like they ruined him. Like Thor Ragnarok was the best version of Thor, and now the Russo brothers just ruined it. And I'm literally quoting an exact tweet, and I'm like, because they gave him a beer belly and they gave him a lot of emotional trauma, and he's trying to
Yeah.
forget that. Like, okay, yeah, sure, they ruined him. Whatever. Don't worry, he's going to be back in shape by the time Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, or whenever the next film he's in is going to appear. Like, guys, it's fine. And we have lots of other movies where Chris Hemsworth looks hot. It's fine. And even the dad bod is totally fine. But like,
Dad bod.
but no, it's it upsets me that people are so dismissive because he doesn't have a six-pack anymore.
Well,
like that bothers
Well, it's
me.
still in there somewhere.
I know it's more like a keg.
It's a keg now.
The criticism I've heard is that they're actually mocking someone who would have PTSD and mocking his pain and just making fat jokes of it. So that's what I've read. And other people have told me
criticism of the same thing from two different perspectives.
Right.
That's very interesting.
And I think it's understandable that if someone went through that much trauma and is in that much grief, like losing not only his brother in front of his own eyes, but his whole, like, Asgard is gone. Now there's new Asgard, and he's trying.
Like
he's trying.
His girlfriend dumped him.
Right. I mean,
his girlfriend dumped him. He lost both his parents. Then he lost Asgard. Then he lost his brother.
Yeah.
And then on top of everything, his quote unquote failure is what caused half of the universe to disappear.
I mean, the guilt, the grief, the just whole trauma of it all. That's one path for someone to go. And I think they're showing it